Hillary Clinton typically says very predictable things, but recently she said something unexpected and interesting. In an interview with The Guardian, Hillary Clinton warned that mass immigration into Europe may need to slow down because it is driving a rise in political extremism and volatility. And she's onto something. When governments adamantly refuse to listen to the public may start looking for alternatives. Now, many on the left are attacking Hillary Clinton for her flash of insight. One person who is not is Angela Nagle. She just wrote maybe the most interesting piece in the last 6 months. It's called The Left Case Against Open Borders, and she joins us tonight. Angela Nagle, thank you for coming on. I'll say I have no idea what the rest of your politics are, but I thought this was such a smart and brave piece. I can't imagine what kind of reaction you got to it. But tell me if I'm mischaracterizing it. You're making the case that open borders may harm low-wage workers in the country whose borders are open. Is that a fair statement of what you're saying?
Yes, I mean, I think it's kind of a disaster for working people on both sides. Countries that have a lot of problems with, emigration, with brain drain,
yes,
simply can't keep their professional class. And then the countries that migrants tend to move to, I mean, there's low-wage migrants, and, it's not their fault. We shouldn't blame the migrants, but we really need to start putting pressure on businesses and employers. The conversation has all been around ICE and the border, but the truth is, if you don't put a lot of pressure on the employers, the migration situation is going to continue to be in a state of crisis.
Well, I agree with that. And one of the most bewildering things in the last couple of years is watching, not people on the actual left, I think you're on the actual left, but the sort of American liberal left, taking the side of Tyson's Chicken or some other big employer, in effect. When did that happen? When did that change take place?
I'm not exactly sure when it happened, but like a lot of these things, there is this kind of bubble around the media class who change a position on something overnight, and then the rest of the world wakes up and finds that this moral taboo has been erected kind of overnight. But, as I said in the piece, billionaire-funded free market think tanks have been churning out open borders ideology for years now, and it's a shame that that people who should be offering an alternative that places, the lot of workers at its center, but also the relationship between the kind of like almost imperial relationship between the big world-dominating economies and others. Right now we're seeing this really tragic situation on the border. And the thing is, I defend in the piece America's right to have borders and to have a sovereign nation.
Right.
But, Trump was supposed to be the America First guy. And the truth is that, a lot of time with American foreign policy, America is not respecting the sovereignty of other nations, whether it's through military interventions in the Middle East or economic interventions in Latin America. And we're seeing the consequences of that now. But it's just a very shallow debate where we just...
I agree. I can't believe I'm agreeing with you, but I am. And I respect your braveness. I'm sure you took a lot of heat for this, but I hope that it starts a much-needed conversation.
I hope so,
on
too.
the left. Thank you, Angela Nagle. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Author and columnist Mark Steyn joins us. So, Mark, there you heard someone on the actual American left make the point that I think we've been talking about for a couple of years now, that the people who are telling you they're on the side of civil rights are actually on the side of some creepy global corporation that wants to reduce your rights. Why has nobody said this until, like, her?
Well, I think it's because the so-called globalists actually have prioritized their own virtue signaling over the interests of the masses. I find it interesting, as one Irishman to an Irish lady, that Angela Nagle spend most of her life in Ireland, which has always had open borders with England. And
Yes.
she quotes in the piece Karl Marx pointing out that when large numbers of Irishmen went to England, it suited the bosses because it depressed wages, and it also created two groups of the working class, so that the English working class resented the Irish working class, and the Irish working class resented the English working class. It was in the boss's interest, and
Yes.
that's now actually the situation that the Democrats are inflicting on America. I saw Geraldo today, and he was going on about how the president needs to be more compassionate. We need more compassion with immigration. Compassion, compassion, compassion. Again, to quote Angela Nagle's piece, I don't see what the hell is so compassionate about there being more Somali doctors in Chicago than there are in the whole of Somalia, which is a nation of 80 million people. What's compassionate about denuding developing countries of their best and brightest, so that if you want to see a doctor in Somalia, you're screwed because all the Somali doctors are in Chicago?
Why does nobody make that point? How are we helping if 1/3 of the population of El Salvador lives here? Why are we surprised when El Salvador is a mess?
No, I think that's, but I think again it's to do with the elitist worldview. If you look at left progressive elites 60 years ago, their domestic staff were mostly black. And that makes the progressives feel a little uncomfortable now. Makes the Barbara Streisand class feel a little uncomfortable. So they actually now prefer to have Hispanic, Latin American, whatever immigrants as their domestic class. But basically, this kind of mass immigration depresses workers' wages in developing countries and operates as a brain drain. In developed countries, it depresses wages, and in the developing world, it's a massive brain drain. It works in nobody's advantage except for the big corporations and virtue-signaling leftist elites.
God, that's so nicely put. You are one of the crispest summarizers I've ever met. Mark Steyn, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Tucker.